The Lord be with you. Reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Lord, be on my mind, be on my lips, and in my heart. Jesus departed from there and came to his native place, accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astounded. They said, "Where did this man get all this? What kind of wisdom has been given to him? What mighty deeds are wrought by his hands? Is he not the carpenter, the son of Mary, the brother of James and Joseph and Judas and Simon? Are not his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. And Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his native place, and among his own kin, and in his own house." So, he was not able to perform any mighty deed there, apart from curing a few sick people by laying his hands on them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
So today's gospel passage is Mark chapter 6. And let me put it in perspective. Mark's gospel has been unfolding. We've been hearing a little bit every week. It's a short, fast-moving gospel. And what's been happening so far is Jesus comes onto the scene, God into our humanity. And immediately, people see his power. He's preaching with authority that they've never seen before. He's curing the sick. He's casting out demons. Right? Remember, he calmed the sea and the winds. Last week, he raised someone from the dead. God is in our midst. He is working his power and his will, and nothing can stop him. Right? Except he comes home. And because of their lack of faith, he can do no mighty deed. This passage points out the importance of faith in our life. Without faith, God's power is limited. And myself included, we lack faith. We may have faith in some areas of our life, but other areas close to home, perhaps, where we have more strength or knowledge of the situation, we refuse to let God in and to do his will because we think we got it all handled. But our faith, like clogged arteries, like a dam in the river, our lack of faith will prevent God's power from flowing in our lives. That's a powerful meditation for me. And so, the message today is, how do we increase our faith? And I am with you when I preach this way. I lack faith in many areas, and it's a constant struggle. And so, let's talk a little bit about faith. Some things I like to remember. Number one, faith is a miracle. Faith is a God-given quality or gift. It's a theological virtue, means it's not our doing. So one thing to remember is we have to ask God for faith. Mark chapter 9, as the father is trying to have his son healed, and Jesus says, if you had faith, or it said to his disciples, if you had faith, you could heal him. And the father says, I do have faith, but help my lack of faith. It's a beautiful prayer. Number two, even though faith is a God-given quality, it's something we have to exercise. I like to think of it as a muscle. If we don't use it, we lose it. It atrophies. The more we challenge ourselves to act on our faith, it is strengthened. And then that gives us more faith to ask for more and to try greater things. And over time, our faith grows. Another thing I like to think about and talk about in faith, faith doesn't mean you always feel perfectly confident about everything. Right? Sometimes, and it happens in Scripture, you can doubt and have faith at the same time. You can have great troubles and say, God, where are you? It ain't working, and yet have faith at the same time. And it turns out maybe these times are even when our faith is greater than in good times. Because even though it doesn't seem right, we keep going through it, asking for God's help. So that's important to remember. Another thing about faith that's really, really important is it is not the same thing of belief. Belief in God and faith in God are very different things. And it is faith, not belief, that unleashes God's power in our life. I've told this story before, but it's such a good one, I got to tell it again. What's the difference between, again, it's like the third, fourth, fifth time. What's the difference between faith and belief? It's as if someone came up to you and said, I am a tightrope walker. I can put a tightrope across the Niagara Falls, and I can walk across it. I'm so good, I can even push a wheelbarrow across it. Yeah, you like that, eh? And God says, we love babies, by the way. It's a good sign of a growing church, especially a miracle baby. But faith versus belief. Belief says, yeah, I believe you. You go ahead and do it. I'll stand here on the shore and watch. Faith is when you get in the wheelbarrow and say, let's go together. Right? Belief in God is very different than faith. And it's hard to have faith. But little by little, we need to ask God to increase it and to act on it. Here are some inspirational examples. Have you heard the story about, you have, because I've told it before too. Wish I could come up with new stuff. Danny Thomas. Maybe you younger people don't know, but the older people, Danny Thomas was a comedian and actor. I think he was born in 1959 or something. Spent time living in Detroit. That's kind of why I've paid attention. But have you heard of St. Jude's Hospital for Children? Still to this day, one of the greatest monuments and helps. No child pays for any care. It's a research hospital dedicated to curing cancer for children. That was a result of Danny Thomas's faith. He was a struggling, young, trying to be comedian, actor, and singer. And in Detroit, he went to church. His wife was in the hospital to deliver their first child. He was so moved at Mass that he opened his wallet at collection time, took his last $7, put it in the collection. After realizing what he had done and how he couldn't even pay the medical bills for his wife and his child, he prayed to God and said, look, I need your help. Help me at least pay my medical bills. The next day, he got a job that gave him $70, multiplied his gift by 10. As time went on, his career was still struggling. His wife rightfully was encouraging him to go into something different. And so he prayed, and he heard about St. Jude, and he said to St. Jude, guide my life and I will build you a shrine. His career started to take off. He was inspired to go to Chicago, where his career took off, and he moved his family. And there's a long story to it, but over time, even when he struggled again, he recommitted that, made that promise again. But God so directed him in that career that he entrusted to him that eventually he built this hospital. Even today, it's still run by philanthropy, and I think it has a $2 billion a year annual budget. Incredible. God can do great things in our life if we allow God through faith. Another example. I don't really watch this. It's a good show. No reason why you shouldn't watch it. How many people watch The Chosen? The actor, and I don't know his name, how to say it, but Jonathan Rumi? Yeah. Is that right? He's Catholic. Can I read this to you? Jonathan Rumi, who plays Jesus in the show The Chosen, opened up about his faith in a recent interview. It's an old article. He's had many interviews or YouTube videos. You can check it out. During the interview, Rumi spoke about how prayer can be impactful. As you consistently tap into that habit, you find your relationship with Jesus growing deeper and deeper, just automatically. And as a result, you then experience much more peace, tranquility, and serenity in your life, and the ability to really muscle through some of the most difficult obstacles and challenges that life can throw at you. Rumi also described an instance where he was transformed by prayer. When Rumi was broke, he prayed and his life changed. Quote, "I was literally on my knees and I said, 'Jesus, I surrender myself to you. Take care of everything.' And then 3 months later, I got the call to do The Chosen. It was a point that I think my life was building to, through prayer, to when that happened. And I realized that trying to micromanage God was not something that was working in my favor. At once I let him take the wheel, everything changed. The decisive moment was that simple prayer of surrender." I think it's really difficult for people. I agree. Especially when we feel so out of control. When we turn on the news and see all this going on today, it feels like we have no control over our lives. But God hasn't forsaken us. He's not abandoned us. He's faithful to us to the very end. And it's a matter of tapping into that faith and allowing him to be more involved in our lives. And surrender is the first step to getting there. I admit it's tremendously difficult to surrender your whole life to God like he's talking about. And it's common for us to do some things, like when you're sick, many people realize we're powerless and we pray to God. But things more close to home, like our finances, our jobs, oftentimes we tell God, I got this under control. But the challenge is to surrender everything to God. But here's another reason why I know that's hard. And I'm only trying to joke here. The reason why that's hard is because we have a brain. And we know that if we really trust God this much with our lives, our career, our relationships, our money, we may fail. We may struggle. And you know what? Sometimes that really is God's will. Crazy. But how else is God going to guide our lives? If everything we think we want to do and should be doing succeeds, we're never going to be doing anything but our own will. And so to totally trust yourself to God is so contrary to every fabric or every being, I don't know if that's the right word, every impulse in our life, because we want to be in control and we want to survive. And having faith like this is a total surrender, a trust, it's a death. And so, here's my advice today. Don't start big, start small. It's like a muscle, right? Just exercise what little faith we have. And can I give you 2 suggestions on real easy ways to grow your faith?
Yes.
Can I? You know why I paused and asked? Is because you're not going to like these. No one likes it when the priest talks about money. The easiest thing we can do, and it's difficult, to trust God and to grow our faith is tithing. Now, tithing can be 10%, it can be 5%. But you notice that's what Danny Thomas did. He put that $7 in the basket, got back 7 times that, or 10 times that. Now, I'm not saying don't do it for that reason. But it taught him that God is powerful and God guides our life. And it led to bigger things. Deacon Ralph Pollo, who talks at the charismatic conferences that I've been to, shares, in my life, I was a youth minister. And everyone told me I couldn't make it financially, but I entrusted my finances to God, and I raised 3 children and put them all through Catholic school and college. What I found is that when God recognized I was trustworthy in small things, like money, because for God that's the easiest thing to help us with, then God gave me the greater gifts, the spiritual gifts in which he now runs an evangelization ministry that's nationwide, I think even worldwide. And so, it is difficult, but tithing tells God that you have faith and you're putting him first. Said another way, if you just give money to the poor or the church, you're exercising charity, and that's good. But when you tithe, you turn that charity into faith and exercise your faith. Why? Because tithing is a certain percent that you promise to God as part of your prayer you're going to do, and then you give that percentage to God no matter what, which means you're giving him your first fruits. And then you're saying, God, you're first. I trust in you to provide for what I need and my family needs. And that turns the charity into an act of faith. And as you see that help that God gives you, then it increases your faith. Others, many have testified to this. I'm not just having 1 or 2 examples. Here's the second thing, and this one is we see in Jonathan Rumi's example. Tithe your time. Maybe even you can start here if you don't want to tithe money. Tithing your time. Just take time every day to pray. Take time every day to reflect on your life in the light of God's teaching and evaluate, where are you doing his will? Where have you surrendered? Where have you not? Right? To tithe, if you just tithe 1% of your waking hours, that's 15 minutes a day. Give it God some of your quality time. Read the scriptures, pray the scriptures, the Gospels and the Psalms especially. Try to understand what is God's will for humanity. Meditate, contemplate, say the rosary, listen to reflections, read a good book, even watch a movie. There's many ways to pray. Keep experiencing, but God will slowly develop our faith, and then we will be inspired to see different ways that we can further act on our faith. And God's power can be unleashed in our lives, in our families, in our world. Faith is difficult. It's a God-given gift. We need to exercise it. Let's exercise it. Allow God's power to be unleashed in our life. 2 easy ways to start. Tithe our money at some percent, and tithe our time and pray.